The fierce Battle of Tarawa in World War II claimed the lives of 6,500 US and Japanese soldiers. John Ziegler, a 6'4", 220-pound Marine, barely survived the battle, suffering wounds requiring months of painful physical rehab. A determined Ziegler devoted himself to medicine, specifically to help the handicapped and severely injured. Pursuing his scientific aspirations at Swiss drug and chemical manufacturer Ciba, he worked as a consultant developing a new drug called Dianabol. Intended to aid burn and polio patients by promoting tissue growth, it was a steroid designed to provide the muscle-building benefits of testosterone without the negative androgenic side effects. Ziegler recognized the potential of Dianabol to assist patients undergoing the same wound recovery he had experienced, as well as its potential to build strength and muscle mass. What Ziegler didn't know then was that the battles he had fought in the Pacific would one day be played out as proxy skirmishes on basketball courts and Olympic stadiums around the world in a new frontier of sports. One of the things I liked most about the documentary Bigger, Stronger, Faster was its ability to cohesively weave a variety of related topics, comprehensively connecting the dots to support its central thesis. The scope and coverage of the film is simply amazing. From the history of doping in sports to the medical uses of steroids, societal reactions to athletes breaking doping rules, the unregulated supplement industry, Major League Baseball's steroid era, Victor Conte and the Balco scandal, doping and drug testing at the Olympic Games, laws surrounding steroid use, the ease of obtaining steroids in the United States, the use of anabolic steroids in the fitness modeling and diet industries, performance-enhancing drug use among musicians, US fighter pilots, and in the pornography industry, body image, genetic engineering, and the Taylor Hooton Foundation. It's a film that, despite its range, doesn't overwhelm or skirt the issues with shallow treatment, and it's a testament to the film's prescience and enduring relevance today. Thanks to skillful editing, lively animation, insightful narration, and Bell's incisive interviews, what might have been a dull commentary turns out to be a riveting and rewatchable snapshot in time. In particular, the scenes featuring the baseball congressional hearings were political theatre at their worst, showcasing uninformed and ignorant politicians scrambling to create an island of purity in a pharmaceutical-soaked world. The hilarious scene of an apoplectic Joe Biden raging about the un-American use of PEDs is an irony that doesn't withstand historical scrutiny. For the first 100 years of professional sports, mixing drugs and human endeavour didn't spark the moral panic and social condemnation we see today. An athlete's crowning obligation has and always will be to seek victory using any means possible. Employing PEDs to go faster, higher, and stronger not only fulfilled an athlete's professional duty, but was something encouraged by medical experts, government, media, fans, and sporting bodies. The modern use of the word doping was demonized only in situations where drugs were used to sabotage or cripple performance, as in the case when given to horses to rig and throw the betting on races. Instead of moral outrage and disgust, the media described athlete PED use as something casually matter-of-fact, a necessary and logical extension for athletes pursuing grueling activities such as 6-day cycling races. PED use was instead a praiseworthy illustration of an athlete's honourable commitment to their sport. Likewise, sporting fans never stigmatised the use of drugs. Whether it was working the coal mine, out on the farm, or racing your bike, the public was fine with labourers and athletes employing modern chemistry to do their jobs better. After experiencing crushing defeat in the marathon at the first two modern Olympics, the Americans sought their own competitive edge through chemistry. Their first victory celebrated American pride and innovation, blending the technology of chemical science with human fortitude to achieve the ultimate drug-assisted performance. Following the race, media heaped praise on the use of PEDs in sports, reporting, "The marathon from a medical perspective showed that drugs are very beneficial to athletes along the road." PEDs were simply part of a holistic athlete preparation regimen, morally indistinguishable from proper nutrition, massage, sport-specific training, and rest. During the interwar period, scientists and coaches from Germany and the US openly conducted experiments with various performance-enhancing compounds, such as cocaine, adrenal hormones, and amphetamines. In 1925, the British Arsenal Football Club distributed stimulants to their players before a cup match against West Ham United, promising that these pep pills would enable their players to put in shots that looked like leather thunderbolts. By the late 1930s, sporting bodies began to take action against the rising drug use of athletes. Drug use was becoming as common as water, and in 1938 the Olympic Committee banned the use of drugs or artificial stimulants of any kind. World War II, however, brought a new pharmaceutical aspect to the conflict, as both sides extensively used amphetamines, bringing new meaning to the phrase war on drugs. The Cold War intensified PED use in sports as the opposing ideologies of communist Russia and Western capitalism fueled a new proxy arms race. A government-backed, systemically supported Russian chemical enhancement program proved to be a formidable opponent, which outpaced the initially disorganized Americans. And by the 1950s, Soviet athletes were winning more medals than the Americans, leading to concerns about US prestige. During the World Championships held in Vienna, Austria in 1954, the aforementioned John Ziegler aided the US weightlifting team, and it was there that he had a conversation with the Soviet weightlifting coach over drinks. The Soviet coach told Ziegler that his athletes were using testosterone as a recovery aid, with great success. Ziegler attended the 1956 weightlifting World Championships in Moscow, where he witnessed not only the effectiveness of the Soviet testosterone use, but also the androgenic side effects experienced by its cathetized athletes. Returning to the United States, Ziegler informed US Olympic trainers that the Eastern Bloc countries and Russians were using every trick to win, especially in strength sports. Ziegler, himself a fitness fanatic, regularly visited a gym owned by Bob Hoffman, the president of York Barbell and a coach for the US Olympic weightlifting team. John Grimek, a two-time Mr. America and member of the 1936 US Olympic weightlifting team, stated that Ziegler had obtained confiscated data on Nazi testosterone use during his research on Dianabol at SIBA. This research indicated that testosterone had the ability to enhance muscle mass and strength. Ziegler was intrigued to know how SIBA's synthetic alternative Dianabol compared. So he began conducting initial unsupervised experiments with the drug on patients and fellow gym rats. In Ziegler's opinion, his country's athletes had a moral and existential obligation to charge their physiology with the same chemical ammunition as their communist enemies. Although Cell Pharmaceuticals had already launched another anabolic steroid named Nilevar 2 years prior, Dianabol was forever linked to sports due to Ziegler's personal and professional involvement in weightlifting. While Ziegler's motives were patriotic and steroids weren't illegal at the time, his work quickly led to widespread abuse of steroids by athletes and bodybuilders. Ziegler's initial motivation quickly soured into regret. Ziegler was soon treating patients suffering the destructive symptoms of anabolic steroid abuse, and in 1967 he raged, "What is with these simple-minded shits? Once people get their hands on steroids," he said, "they were eating them like candy." The anabolic steroid monster was out, and as much as Ziegler came to regret it, it wasn't coming back. That year, Ziegler wrote a piece in Strength and Health magazine condemning athletes' steroid abuse. The use of steroids was spiraling out of control, with many athletes taking 20 times the recommended dose. And before his death in 1983, Ziegler lamented the disgrace, saying that no one plays sports for fun anymore. The US government, however, only upped the ante. While declaring a war on drugs, Nixon hypocritically adopted an uncompromising stance towards American athletic achievement, famously declaring that, "Show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser." Viewing organized sports as a means of safeguarding against the erosion of social fabric, he charged officials with the belief that the highest moral obligation was to win, even if it meant violating other ethical principles and trampling existing prohibitions. After the trouncing of American athletes at the 1976 Olympics, The American government urged the need to enhance their performance in line with the organised and systematic program used by the Russians and East Germans, who viewed athletes' health as entirely secondary to their political mission. One US official stated, "If we're going to compete against synthetic athletes, we must ourselves become synthetic athletes." 1984's President Reagan doubled down on this commitment to end the trend of communist victories in sports, recognizing American performance enhancement programs relative to the Russian and East Germans that were in the dark ages. He implored the USOC to deliver a first-class performance at the upcoming Olympics. American officials, influenced by Reagan's rhetoric, saw winning medals as more than just a moral obligation, but also a matter of national defense. Seeking to emulate East Germany's highly organized state plan, the US established its own sport-centric equivalent of the nuclear Manhattan Project, emphasizing the interconnectedness of Olympic success and national security. The PED arms race was in full swing. What NASA was to America's space program, the USOC became to Olympic sport. So we can clearly see that Biden's proclamation of PEDs being un-American collides with the clear reality situating steroids as American as apple pie. It was historically blind rhetoric that belied the inevitable outgrowth of the preceding decade's government-backed chemical arms race and the masculine self-actualization of the Reagan era. The film's many examples also emphasize the superficial differences between artificial enhancements and natural ones, thereby further exposing the hypocritical inconsistency. So why is Floyd Landis punished for using steroids, but not for using a homemade altitude chamber to enhance his performance in high-altitude competition? Why isn't Tiger Woods' LASIK eye surgery considered performance-enhancing? So why are students using Adderall and Ritalin as study drugs, and musicians using beta blockers to reduce performance and anxiety, acceptable means of performance enhancement? Why is the practice of providing cortisone shots and Air Force pilots mandated to use Go pills not seen as something morally abhorrent? Why are $42 billion per year spent by Big Pharma in direct-to-consumer advertising of potentially harmful and addictive drugs not considered unethical? If public health is a legitimate consideration of legislators, Bigger, Stronger, Faster takes a skeptical view of the health risks of steroids and is critical of the contradictions imposed by an unregulated but legal health supplement industry. Faced with reports of over-the-counter supplements causing harm to consumers, the FDA in the 1990s recommended bringing many supplements under its control and testing their claims before they could be sold. The supplement industry reacted strongly, with retailers urging customers to lobby Congress to prevent the FDA from clamping down on their freedoms or, quote-unquote, kiss your supplements goodbye. Despite the potential harm of unregulated supplements, the industry was determined to maintain the status quo. Shown in the film as a champion for the supplement industry, Senator Orrin Hatch argued that Americans need a safe harbor from the oppressive FDA. Americans, he stated, were capable of making their own consumer choices and didn't need to be treated like idiots. The film clearly lays bare the mental gymnastics and hypocrisy of government to demonize PEDs on one hand, and yet allow an unregulated and highly deceptive supplement industry to exist on the other. The film also gives a glimpse of the surgeries and medicines emerging that can enhance or improve any part of the human body. So where do we draw the line on what constitutes cheating? Genetic manipulation presents a science fiction-like post-human future, raising the question of whether natural athletes will even exist in the years to come. So 15 years after the film's release, what has changed? Mike Mad Dog tragically died soon after the film's release from an inhalation-induced heart attack. Chris's mum, Rosemary Bell, passed away from declining health issues. Louis Simmons is no longer with us, and Joe Biden somehow got to be president. Arnold's posters are back on the wall at Gold's Gym. Chris Bell went on to battle his own prescription drug addiction, which he chronicled in his follow-up documentaries Addiction Thugs and Leap of Faith. Today, he is an open and unapologetic user and advocate of PEDs for life enhancement. Mark Bell, galvanized into action by the death of his brother Mike, has become one of the most widely recognized YouTubers and fitness entrepreneurs in the industry. At the time of the film's release, the reach and popularity of social media was still in its infancy. These days, it's inescapably ubiquitous, and the once underground and taboo Pandora's box of PEDs is now openly discussed, flaunted, and once again presently under threat by newly proposed government regulation. Society remains more than ever before awash in an ocean of pharmaceuticals, waist deep in a collective hypocrisy condemning athletes who use PEDs, while itself spending and legislatively protecting its $400 billion per year spending on prescription drugs. 11% of people over the age of 12 take antidepressants. Prescription opioid painkillers kill 10,000 Americans per year. The 6% of American children on performance-enhancing amphetamines, and half the nation is being fleeced by an unregulated supplement industry. And yet PEDs paradoxically continue to be the poster boy for the finger-wagging anti-doping missionaries and their schizophrenic policies. The driving rationale of elite sports has and always will be the exploration of the limits of human potential. Doping naturally follows the logic and drive of the sheer will to win. The whole point of training and preparation is to make the playing field uneven. If there's a transcendent essence of animating spirit motivating elite sport, it lies in the marshalling of available technologies to gain the competitive advantage. Attempting to save athletes from their irrepressible will to win is a disingenuous fool's errand laden with its own unintended harmful consequences. Prohibiting doping in sports and the resulting moral outrage paradoxically encourages athletes to push the limits of both dosages and also risk new untested pharmaceuticals minus the potential protection of risk management and appropriate medical care. Despite all the idealistic moralizing and rationalization for eliminating PED use in sports, the only real justification the anti-doping crusaders can offer is that they simply don't like it. Sally Jenkins, in her excellent Washington Post editorial in 2007, summarized the collective amnesia regarding drugs in sports. She writes, "So maybe we should quit assigning any ethical value to what athletes do and simply enjoy their feats as performance artists. Legalizing performance enhancers might end the charade and restore some candor to what we're watching. But open slather use comes with its own litany of potential issues." John Romano may have dismissed steroids' potential dangers with his now famous soundbite, "Show me the bodies." But it's very clear that the increasing number of deaths in the sport, especially when compared to those of the pre-steroid era, are blatantly indicative of the dangers inherent in abusing these drugs. One thing for certain is there are no easy answers, and it's doubtful a resolution to these questions will be answered anytime soon. The battle, as always, to be bigger, stronger, faster in this hyper-competitive culture rages on.